All right. Well, we have Lisa Nguyen here today. We're very excited to have her on the EO podcast. I've known Lisa for about 4 years.
Wow.
She serves on the board with me as well for EO. And in prepping for this podcast, I had an idea of what we're going to talk about, et cetera. And I was just blown away by her bio and the video I watched. I thought I knew you pretty well, Lisa, but you have quite the background, and I'm really looking forward to diving in here. It's just an amazing story. So thank you for coming today.
Oh, no, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I love EO. So this is, you know, I would do anything really for EO. So I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, it's fantastic. So, Lisa, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and, where you're from and a little bit of that inspirational story that I saw. It's simply amazing.
Well, I'm so originally Vietnamese. I was born in Vietnam. And very similar to Michelle's story, my mother and I left Vietnam when I was 4 years old. We landed in a refugee camp in Hong Kong, and where we were there for 3 years.
Wow.
I spent 5 to 8, and then resettled to Australia on humanitarian grounds, and that was where I grew up. It was an extraordinary place to grow up. Australia is so kind and just a really beautiful. Like I always joke with people when we talk about Australia, if you go, you would want to move there. But I grew up there, so you got to get off the island with all, we're the smallest continent, largest island. So you got to get off the island. So I guess, let me know what other background you want to hear, and I will share it.
So these very varied experiences, right? You're very, very young in Vietnam, and then you spend a pretty long time in a refugee camp. I'm assuming that must have been very impactful in your life. Can you tell me kind of what really got into your core during that period of time that's kind of made you who you are today?
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't really, it wasn't really in my consciousness kind of growing up. And it was only, I think, when I started doing a lot of work around personal growth and being a part of EO and being exposed to all of the speakers that we get to hear, that I think it's become more of something that I'm more conscious of. As being very foundational for the person that I've become. It really was just my mother and I. So, it was incredible because I think one of the most impactful was the night that we left Vietnam. It was, it was very dark. You have to leave in the middle of the night. You're escaping. You can't tell anybody. And I was very young, so I didn't know what was happening. But I did remember kind of being held by my grandfather. And he had raised my mom and he had raised me because my grandmother had passed away when she was very young, so my grandfather was very much the figure. And then she became, kind of pregnant out of wedlock. Back in the day in Vietnam, that was a whole situation, not like it is today.
Situation, yeah.
So he raised me while she was kind of working hard to kind of earn an income for the family, and so he was quite attached to me. I think, I hope, and I still remember kind of like having kind of sitting on his lap and he's holding me and he is crying and I can feel him shaking, but he couldn't cry too loud because the house we live it's just like a wall between the neighbors and us. So he was trying to muffle his tears, and then there was a moment where he just said to my mom, he said, just leave her at home, leave her here, and I'll raise her.
Yeah.
And because at the time, like 1 million people escaped Vietnam during that time. 10% would die at sea. Like that was kind of your chances. It's pretty common to hear about people missing or dying or not making it. And then I remember my mother saying, Dad, I'm taking her with me, and if we die, we'll die together.
Wow.
And it was.
And you remember this?
I do.
Wow.
And I remember
9 years old.
No. I was 4 or 5.
4, that's
My
right,
mother
yeah.
repeated this story later on, but I definitely remember kind of being
So that
held
must
by
be one
him.
of your earliest memories.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And I remember kind of like being taken out. He walked out the alley, and he's standing at the front door of that little alley where we live in, and he's like holding onto the door, crying. And she walked me down the street. I remember the moon kind of like in front of us because it was a really bright moon that night. And then I turn around, and he's like holding on to the door and kind of crying. And I guess that must have been something that I had written in high school, when you write, and I still have that, I think, in a computer somewhere back, kind of reflecting on that memory of that night.
For sure.
And then other than that, I was very young to be kind of conscious of or to be aware of like the dangers associated or, any of that. So we just going along for the ride. It was a lot tougher, I think, for my mother being a single woman with a 4-year-old.
Sure.
That would have been a much bigger experience, I
Wow,
think, for
I
her.
can't imagine. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So in Australia, when were you there for? What ages?
So I arrived when I was 8.
Yeah.
So I remember I started, I think it was the last kind of couple of months of grade 3, because in Australia, the school holiday breaks in December, and then we get December to like February off.
Okay.
That's our big break because that's our summer.
Sure.
So I came to Australia and started the end of grade 3, and then officially grade 4 was when I first had my full kind of year.
And when did you leave Australia?
2005. So I kind of I grew up in Australia. I went to law school. I went to Sydney Law School.
Okay.
Graduated from law school. Started my Master of Laws, actually. I was working in a law firm for a very short time, and then had the opportunity to go and volunteer in the Philippines for also Vietnamese refugees. But for those people, they were stuck in this country. So we went to Hong Kong, and then from Hong Kong, we came to Australia. Wow. These were refugees who came to the Philippines and then stayed there for 20-something years.
Sure.
So I ended up going there to do some pro bono legal work and stayed. And then was offered.
Was that a passion? I don't want to say passion project, but was your interest in law and your track there
I think,
fueled by your experience mostly?
I think it was just being given like the opportunity, and I said yes to it.
Okay.
There really wasn't that much planning at the time. I was much younger, so there wasn't really that much planning around, where is this going to take me? It was more like, hey, they're looking for pro bono lawyers. Would you come for 4 months? And I'm like, okay, I'll come for 4 months.
And 4 months turned
And
into...
I remember turning to I went into my partner's office and I said to him, hey, and he had just come back from vacation too. So that was the perfect time to catch him. I was like, hey, this offer came, I want to go and do some pro bono legal work. Will you allow me to take some time off the firm? And he's like, oh, of course. And then when you come back, you have the job at the firm. And I was like, great. And I never came back.
So you've done a lot of humanitarian work, right? So can you expand on that a bit?
Yeah, sure. So, it started with like the 4 months, and then I ended up being in the Philippines for a year. And then that nonprofit offered me the job as executive director of the nonprofit, which was based in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. This is why I have a D.C. phone number. And so I actually moved to America because of this job as the executive director of Voice. And I was in D.C. for 2.5 years. That was where I lived when I first came to America. We resettled the remaining refugees that was in the Philippines, kind of the last 400 during my tenure, and then we also opened up a anti-human trafficking arm in Cambodia. So that was very much a part of like my life, kind of prior to becoming, a mom and becoming an entrepreneur.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is there a particular story you want to share about something that was, proud's not the right way to say it, but something really impactful where it really was deep in your heart, where you helped someone or a group of people that, was particularly unique or exceptional?
This is a story that I shared many years ago when I was first given the opportunity to speak at a subsequent employer. But I remember... one of the most impactful moment of being in a refugee camp was when I was in the camp and there was a student from UCI, if I remember correctly. She was from UCI. It was like a Vietnamese Students Association. They'd had a mission trip to Hong Kong. So these like students from the University of California, Irvine, they were handing out apples to little kids. And I remember being a recipient of one of those apples. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, this is like the nicest thing I've ever received. Like, it smelled so good and the apples were big. And for days, like we slept on the concrete floor, in this big, what felt like maybe it was like a gym or like whatever it was really big. And, we were like on the floor sleeping like hundreds and hundreds of
Sure.
people. But like, my mom and I had this little thing, and they gave out like toilet paper, and we got some like underwear and toothpaste and toothbrush. That was some of the handouts that we received. I had this apple. And then I would wrap my toilet paper around the apple just so that it could smell good.
Oh.
So pungent. It was incredible. I thought this apple was like the thing. And then many years on, there was this moment where I was sitting in the office in the Philippines. We were in this like rundown office. There were rats everywhere. And it was like really just it was one of those experiences that you can only have. And there was a refugee, Gohue, I still remember her name, sitting in front of me. And she had been, in the Philippines for 20 years with her family. And it was like a family of like 7 kids. It was a big family. And like I'm filling out her form to resettle to Canada because the Canadian government had accepted had agreed to take the bulk of the leftover refugees. And I remember actually my very first time to Canada was to meet with the Minister for Immigration, Diane Finley at the time. And when I was walking through immigration in Canada, they're like, "Why are you here?" I'm like, "Well, actually, I have a meeting with Diane Finley." I'm like filling out a form. And I'm like, "So what's your name?" And she tells me her name. So I'm like writing down her name. I'm like, "How old are you?" And then I'm like writing down. And it was like, to me, that was very simple. I was filling out a form. We do that every single day here, right? We're filling out a form. Sat there on the other side of the table, and she just looked at me, and she was like, it was like this incredible gift. And whatever I was doing, it was like I might as well be making gold in front of her. And it was, and I think.
What was the gift that she was feeling?
So just me filling out this form, because she cannot do that herself.
Ah, okay.
And the fact that somebody was doing that for her, and they were simple things. It wasn't hard for me. It wouldn't be hard for you, but to her, it was like magic. And I think, as I think back, the woman who gave me the apple, she really was just giving somebody an apple. I don't eat apples that much anymore, and they're everywhere, right? But to me, I was like, wow, you're like making gold in front of my eye. This is magic. And it's like the act of filling out that form for Gohue was like magic to her.
It's amazing.
And it's perception.
We hear these stories here, and being born in the United States, we're granted. And I listen to these stories as we do these podcasts, and they always blow me away because I feel like I have my own epiphany story, right? Of I started here, and I've worked really hard, and I got here, but you realize that in the grand scheme of people have a much more difficult start or path. A lot of entrepreneurs have a kind of rags to riches story, but being born here is kind of like being born on third base, from what I've learned recently, and it gives different experiences that people have at a young age, and the different cultures and the trials and tribulations that people go through. So I appreciate you sharing that vulnerably there. So when you were young, did you always have an entrepreneurial spirit? Was there always an idea there, or did you kind of stumble into something that was an aha moment? Take me through how that worked.
Yeah, I think I've always been very good at sales.
Yeah.
A lot of that, I think, growing up was more funneled towards fundraising or like, doing charity drives at school or more stuff like that, rather than being like an entrepreneur in that sense of the word. When I was working in the nonprofit world, I really wasn't making that much money, but I had another part-time job that helped to kind of fund this passion, this path that I was put on. And at the time, I think money was really not a driver.
Sure.
I think it was when I became a mother for the very first time, suddenly, money was important. Like if I didn't make money, I wouldn't have a way to pay for some of the things that we would need. And I remember, my part-time job had kind of slowed down with the pregnancy and with the baby. So money wasn't coming as easy as before. And then with the nonprofit job, it was more like volunteer kind of, it really a career path for me at that point. And I think that I really experienced an extraordinary period of time in my life as a young mother, where I think we could call it postpartum depression. You could call it whatever you want, but there was definitely an identity crisis, and then this determination to be financially independent. Also, when you work in the nonprofit sector, there's just a lot of BS when you deal with donors. And I remember I had this moment where I'm like, you know what? I want to be the person to write that check. I don't want to be begging other people for the check. I have the skills and the capability to write that check. And I think that was where that fire to be an entrepreneur and to be successful as an entrepreneur, really, that was where it started.
And what was your big entrepreneurship? What was your first major effort that you undertook?
So I had this idea to design a pair of shoes where instead of a mom having to buy 5 pairs of shoes for that age and they're going to grow out of it in 3 months, I thought, well, what if I could just change the decoration on top so that a pair of shoes would go with every single outfit, because they could change out those baubles. We called it baubles. And then as she grows in her shoe size, she'll just get a new pair of shoes, but all of those baubles would still apply to the shoes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So, if she's wearing a red dress, like maybe she can pick a bauble with a little red heart, or if the dress is blue, it's not going to go with the red heart, but she can take that heart out and put in a rainbow. So that was the initial idea. It was called Baubles and Souls, and it was a shoe startup. We spent 2 years, my family and I, kind of designing the push and twist lock mechanism. We patented it. I have a utility patent on it. We, ended up on Shark Tank with the product and landed a deal with Damon John, because every time you say Shark Tank, everybody wants to know is, did you get a deal? They don't but I really just hustled that.
I watched your episode. Why don't you take them how that came together at the end? That was very interesting. I think there's a good nose.
Yeah.
And you were able to turn a no into a yes, right?
So my whole Shark Tank around this idea of manifestation and visualization. I really used that technique all throughout that experience, that journey to get on Shark Tank. I started a journal, the 100-Day Journal, Johnny Lee Dumas.
Yeah.
And, I wrote on the journal.
I'm on day 70 of that right now.
Perfect. So I did that journal to be cast on Shark Tank, because, every year there's, 60,000 companies audition, then 80, and then about 90 to 100, because you could make it to pitch, but if you're
so
not
160,
entertaining.
those are slim odds.
Exactly. I actually started a journal to say that I want to be cast on Shark Tank. I want to go on the show. So that was the 100-Day Journal.
Yeah.
I had this journal. I wrote down a date that I wanted to be on Shark Tank, and then all the goals, all the things you have to do to get there. So the first day was watch 2 episodes of Shark Tank, fill in the application form. Those were the things I had to do. You know how he lists the steps? Yeah. And then our Shark Tank episode aired 1 day and 1 year after I wrote the first journal entry. And I have it, so I'll send it to you so you can share it. But it's incredible. And then when we found out that we got on the show, every night before I went to bed, I would see myself walking down that hallway. Every night. I did that religiously, because we were assigned to produce for almost 6 months to prep for the show. So every night I would go to bed just visualizing myself walk down that hallway. And then I remember when we were in the show and an hour in, and because I know the show's 8 minutes for us, but we were in there for an hour, and there was definitely a point when this was heading to no. I knew that everybody, and before Lori spoke, she was the last one, and I knew that she was going to say no, just from her body language and the way that she was starting her sentence. And then I used my Think and Grow Rich, refuse any other outcome, definite of purpose, right? I looked out and I'm like, nope, I refuse this outcome right now. I refuse to walk out of here without a deal. I just remember looking out thinking, nope, I refuse that. And then as she was like, la, 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 I'm like, nope, Lori, you got to stop. You got to stop. Before you say what you're going to say, I need you guys to hear me out. And that was the point when Damon jumped back in and we got the deal.
And tell what you did to get the deal. What did you say?
I think...
You put some skin in the game, stake in the sand.
Oh my God, I haven't told you guys this yet. But what happened was that in my prep for the Shark Tank episode, there were some EO members who had been on the show. So there was a gentleman, I think he was based out of Detroit. I just organized a Zoom call with him. Part of that journal, the journal prompt, what are the prep So one of the things was find people who've been on the show and talk to them. And this guy, he was an EO member out of Detroit, I believe it was, Mitch, he jumped on the phone with me and just gave me his experience share. And he basically said to me, and this was the moment, he said to me, make it so that they can't say no. Bulletproof the deal so that they can't say no. And it was because of that phone call with that EO member that when I was desperate in the tank, I remember him saying, make it so that they can't say no. So I just sweetened the deal so that there was just no way that he would lose, because my goal was to get a deal. It didn't matter what else happened after that. I wanted to get the deal on TV.
I think there's some, for the entrepreneurs watching, moments where it doesn't maybe make sense on paper or it's not logical, but you just want a certain outcome to happen, and then you're going to figure out how to make something else happen.
Absolutely.
I know this business, I paid over twice what it was actually worth. And the difference is millions and millions of dollars. But I knew the growth potential of the company, and I wasn't really concerned. And I got advice to the contrary, right, saying you can't do this. But I had the pleasure of running this company for about 7 years. I knew all the dirt, I knew all the opportunities, and I said, this is my fails, then I'm going to fail my way. But I just need the deal, right? So that really resonated with me. So I said, I don't care if it's going to be 7 million instead of 3.5 million, because I know if I can just get my hands 100% around this, I can scale it. And obviously there's some luck that goes into that after, and timing and hard work and blood, sweat, and tears, but we've tripled in that 5 years, and it surpassed even my initial expectations. So I think it's just really important that if you're knowledgeable and you're confident in yourself and you're a competent person, I'm more of a fan of let's just make it happen and I'll figure the rest out after.
I like that also, as I'm sharing this story now with you, it's also, it's about a couple of things. It's about knowing exactly what it is that you want. Because the moment that you know what you want, the universe will align itself to make it happen. I wanted to be a successful entrepreneur. Now, in all honesty, Baubles and Souls was not the company that made us, that gave me that feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm like a really cool entrepreneur now.
Okay.
It was the next iteration of that journey, but I knew that I wanted to be successful at being an entrepreneur. I knew that I wanted to be in a financial situation where I can write that check for that charity.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing. And then the second nugget that I'm just like getting now is like, in EO, we always say like, what's that one takeaway?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, that one takeaway was Mitch telling me, make that deal bulletproof. And if I hadn't talked to him, an EO member out of Detroit, if I hadn't had that conversation, and if I hadn't remembered that piece of advice, we would have not had the deal.
Yeah.
So it's like that one takeaway, and you never know how it's going to change the trajectory of where you're going.
For sure. No, I fully agree. And I just had an experience with my kids. One of them is doing the editing over here right now. Last week, we went to the president of the chapter's business because my kids have a small Amazon business. And he had his team and graciously offered to take them through. I took 3 pages of notes myself, right, in 30 minutes. But we got all these gems out of that networking opportunity. But on the way out of the office, another EO member who is a different business, just happens to be in the same corporate office park, happened to be walking in, stopped and said hi and asked what we were doing. And, I told him, and he goes, well, wait a minute, I could help you with that. And it happened to deal with the shipping thing. So I texted him real quick. He wanted dimensions and weights. And then later that afternoon, I got a response back, and it cuts their shipping cost down by about 22%.
Oh my
So
goodness.
that power of networking, and, you never know where that network's going to lead you. And I really like what you said in terms of you, right? So it wasn't even just a chapter experience. If you don't mind me asking, how did you make that connection? Was that through regional events or a WhatsApp channel?
Oh my goodness. I
fine.
was an EOA member coming into EO. I was in EOA for 2 years, and I think it was through introduction from somebody in EOA or in EO, because we were getting ready to go on Shark Tank. And,
Sure.
My EOA crew, they were really excited about that. And they were very, very supportive, made a big difference in that journey. But I think that it was just through that, we were given different contacts. Now, you could be given a contact. It's also your actions, right?
Yeah.
So it's following up, following through.
Execution.
Exactly.
And I like the 100-day journal. As I mentioned, I'm using really, it's like in business, what you measure, you'll improve, right? So you're writing it down, you're measuring it, you're moving forward with it. And then on the execution side, there's so many entrepreneurs or people, maybe not entrepreneurs, but everybody's got ideas, right? Everyone's got 1,000 ideas, but what's the difference between an idea and reality? And making that come to fruition is execution.
And it's now I use the Oak Journal, which is an EO member out of Colorado. But when you do have that, it forces you to write down the steps that you need to take. And sometimes that one step is what also makes a difference. I remember with the Johnny Lee Dumas journal, one of the days was reach out to this person. And it's sometimes it's such a drag, but then I did send her that email. And then she replied connecting me with the producer. And, I got on the phone with this producer, and it just so happens he at the time had a little baby girl at the same age that
everyone's
and that was
connect.
how we fast tracked to get into onto the show without lining up for like 2 days outside of some conference center. So it's just following up. Like, had I not sent that email that day?
Persistence pays, that's for sure. So your main business now is custom nests, correct?
Exactly.
Where did that come from, and what's going on with it?
So we own an interior design and construction company, and we also do our own kind of real estate investing as part of that company. We were still doing baubles and souls. Custom nest is really like a lifelong passion, hobby, like turned into a thriving business. And we didn't even set out to build a business. Basically, I just bought my home. I was watching one of those like HGTV. Own your own vacation home for free.
I watched those
so
too.
then, so then, as we're young, we wanted a place to go where we could spend this time with them because I knew that time was gonna pass really fast, and I wanted a space where we could just go and hug the trees and be together as a family. No TV, no internet. That was the initial idea. Now we have TV and internet in every single room, but the initial goal
Sounded good though.
yes, for this little cabin was to have a place to be as a family. And I remember we had bought this A-frame and renovated it. And by the time, before I could even pay my contractors his final balance, we had somebody knocking on the door offering to pay us double what we had bought it for.
Sure.
And that was just like 3-4 months ago. The light bulb just went on. And I remember the day that deal closed, that house closed, it was like March 8th or March 10 of 2020. Like the whole world shut down, like March 13.
Yeah, well,
but
12th's my birthday, and it was basically that evening. right?
exactly. So I remember because my husband and I, we were having a cocktail, at happy hour together, just to kind of celebrate that deal closing, and also his birthday because he's March 10. And then we just couldn't believe that it had sold, and all of this craziness was happening.
Yeah. A great time to get into that business too, right?
And
I mean, COVID was for that market.
Yeah. Well, what was extra? My husband saying, "Well, let's just lay low and see what the world does and like what happens." And I remember saying to him, "No, we are gonna buy a home right now, and we're just gonna work on it. And by the time everybody else figures out what is gonna happen with the world,
I love that.
we have something to show for it. Like because we're gonna be stuck at home, so let's spend this time just working on this property." And so we bought a home in like I believe the end of March, April of that year, and the real estate market just like went. But I just remember having this like no, let's not sit still. Like let's do something, and that really was the beginning of the company. I am very grateful to Custom Nest because you know what, Robert, in the shoe business, and let me tell you, the apparel business is so tough.
I'll bet.
The sizes, the colors, the styles,
Inventory,
everything is in inventory. Everything we have sat in inventory. Any money we ever made went into inventory. I tried so hard. Like I loved designing the shoe and getting the patent, like the dreaming process. But the everyday running of a company, your average pay per click and your Facebook, all of that stuff I did not like.
Sure.
And I tried so hard to make Baubles and Souls a success and to make meaningful money with it. And I gave it all of my talent, and it wouldn't happen. And over at Custom Nest, what is extraordinary is that it's an area where I love and I put so much of my heart and soul and talent, but all of that shows rewards and ROI.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and then it's like, oh my God, I'm not completely useless. Like
Oh my goodness.
and be and
very
be
useful.
okay.
I know you pretty well. You're a woman of many talents. I think you had a real gem in there too, which is about you took decisive action. Right. And in business, there's always going to be uncertainty. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen at any point in time. I'm importing stuff from different, the regulatory environment changes in the state regularly. The market changes. We're making custom wood products. So luckily, very high end of the market, which is somewhat insulated from the economy, but it still has its sensitivities. And, just act. Right. So the action, a good plan now is better than a perfect plan next week.
Yes.
Right. Because if you're waiting for perfection, especially as an entrepreneur, good luck. Because while you're waiting, there's somebody else that's just, as we talked in the Shark Tank example, there's someone else that's just going to make something happen. Right.
Yes.
And your COVID example was great in terms of, no, we're going to buy a house today. because and if I heard you right, your mindset was other people are going to be laying
Waiting
low
to
and
see what
this is our
happens.
chance to skip ahead a couple steps, right?
Yes.
And it doesn't always work out, right? In your case it did, in my case it did, but I'm sure we both have 100 examples where it didn't. But the reality, like a VC company is, they go and invest in 100 companies. They're not expecting 100 companies to work. Action.
You know what's interesting? I believe in kind of like listening to what your gut is telling you, because
Yeah.
I think that, maybe that's where meditation and like all of the mindfulness practice help. I'm still on my kind of journey to learning more about meditation and being in that space, but I do believe that sometimes something will cross and it's like it's right here and you just have to grab it, or like your gut is telling you this is the right decision, this is the time, and you have to learn to listen to that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I came up with this 4% rule for me.
Okay.
So 4% is 1 hour of your day. 1 over 24 is 4%. And my version of meditation is walking. So I walk.
Amazing.
It's not. It's more for the mind than anything else, because I can get away. I'm in a park. I can think, and I'm walking and I'm thinking. Amazing. And so many good ideas come up, whether it's family, etc. And it's because the mind is calmed down. And, the 4% was one of the ideas. It was saying to myself, if you can't give yourself 1 hour a day, if you can't give yourself 4%, where you still have 96% of your day left, then your life's probably really effed up, right? I have children. We'll talk about your family as well. I've been married 26 years. You have a wonderful husband and children as well, and you're running a business. So we're really busy, right? But you have 4%. And if we have 4%, everybody has 4%. So that's kind of my meditative thought in the last month that really changed the way I really framed everything. I started thinking about, well, what's my 4% at work? So if I'm going to be in the office for 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 hours, one of them out of that 24-hour day has to be really working on the business. Because you think you're working on the business, but you're really not a lot. You're working on improving the business maybe. I always say there's in the business, improving the business, and then on the business. Just that 1 hour a day of strategic on the business thinking makes a huge difference. So I appreciate you sharing that.
No, absolutely.
Well, why don't you, so we talked a lot about work. Why don't you share a little bit of your...
Well, I mean, I have a husband. For those in EO, you would have met him. He's in Spousal Forum and just loving his, it's just amazing. Come together and become this family now, the SLP Forum. And I have 2 little girls. One is 9 and one is 7. Kaya is 9, Nova is 7.
Fantastic.
And definitely, hands down, the joys of my life. I can tell you that I've done extraordinary things and have in my life. I stood next to Bill Clinton and Elton John on stage. Being a mother is still the best thing that has ever happened to me, and it's extraordinary. Definitely loving that right now. I mean, it's yeah.
Yeah, I know you give a ton to EO, so we've talked about things we've gotten out of it. What do you work back and make an impact to the organization? Because
you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with. That's Jim Rohns. He said that, and I absolutely agree with that. I think EO has been life-changing for my family and I, not my family, not just me. When I first joined EO, I was an EOA member, and immediately I joined the board because I think I'm one of those people who are quite, I want to give back. I want to add value. I want to, I think my definition of success is to be able to make something, like to leave something better than how you found it. That's my definition of how I want to be successful. So I joined the board for EOA immediately, and then was given the opportunity to be on the committee for learning in my first year as a EO member. So July was when I joined, and I joined the committee straight away in July. There was no hesitation there. And then the following year, I was given the opportunity to be learning chair for EO under Steve Wilkes when Steve was president. And I did that for 2 years. With EO, it's the people, it's the community, and you definitely get out of it what you put into it. So if you put your heart and your soul and your vulnerability and your sincerity out there, then those people will come to you.
Sure.
And I've met some incredible people at the regional level. And at the end of the day, every single one of us wanting to be seen and to be appreciated for exactly who we are. And sometimes it's hard, because there is a lot of very successful people in EO, and sometimes you can have that fear or that inferiority complex. But at the end of the day, every single person is just trying their best to be the best version of themselves, and they just want to be seen. And if you can come to the table with that vulnerability and sincerity yourself, then I think that everything would be fine.
Yeah, that's great. I just share when I went to business school. So I think it was in my late 20s at that point in time. It was the really good experience at business school wasn't what I learned in business school. Frankly, I don't really use a lot what I learned in business school running my business, but I got around like-minded people who were very, very smart and very opinionated, and you had to work as a team, right, to move things forward. And it wasn't a case where I could just be the sharpest pencil in the barrel and just bully my way through something, right? So that helped me build some skill sets and, around relationships and teamwork and listening skills, et cetera. And then when I got away from that and back in the corporate world, I felt like I was just on a rocket ship for my career going like this. And it was a lot more of just my ideas. And what EO has really brought to me is surrounding myself with other business owners, and particularly the board experience, as you explained it. That is really powerful because no one's really in charge, and you can't really tell, right? And as an entrepreneur, team-based with my team, but at the end of the day, sometimes some things have to get done, and I'm just like, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're doing it. You need to go do it. That doesn't work that way on the board, right?
No.
Or even in forum, and whatnot. So I think it's a great experience for entrepreneurs to be able to exercise and train that muscle of how do you lead through influence and how do you inspire, make sure that it's not all about you. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, I'll admit it, stubborn, and they're not the best listeners a lot, right? We're a little bit bent against, you have to be able to do this on your own. So I think, in giving back to EO, I think you receive even more. Because sometimes the board is a lot of work. Like even this podcast we're doing right now, this is an hour and a half of the day. And, there's a lot of things that need to get done. But in doing this and in giving back, you get so much more in return through all these experiences. So I think that's fantastic. For anybody that's watching now that's not a member and might see this through a marketing channel or something like that, what's kind of a 30-second pitch you would give them as to why they need to look more into joining us?
Oh, my goodness.
We only have 30 seconds.
EO is going to change your life. Do it. And you get out of it what you put into it, and come with your wholehearted sincerity. And it would change the trajectory of your life.
Yeah.
It has for me.
Me too.
And the path of leadership, being on the board, meeting people. There are so many ways to be involved in EO. It is path of leadership, definitely one of it. But all of these executive education programs, I'm currently doing the EMP, the Entrepreneurial Masters Program. It's a 3-year program at EO. And, that has been an extraordinary experience. And then I just, through the chatter on WhatsApp, somebody just did GSA, Global Speakers Academy.
Yes. And
all the chat is like, oh my God, this has been life-changing. Like, it will change your life if you would let it.
The one thing I like that you said is so I want to talk to our members right now. I'm looking at our current members. A lot of our members, forum is their main experience. And I don't want to say it's their only experience, but it's a huge part of it. And forum is fantastic. I love my forum. It's been invaluable. But there's so much more to membership. If you're like you said, you get out what you put in. Right? The events that you talked about, the servitude and the leadership and the different tracks that you can take even outside of the chapter, they're just invaluable. So
I mean, forum, because obviously, like, they're amazing. Hey, team.
We've got a lot of forum.
Yes. No, I mean, forum is definitely a huge part of that.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. And the people in my forum are some of my closest friends today. Somebody in our forum said, guys, if I die one day, I want to make sure that you guys carry my coffin. That's the type of forum we are in. So that's a given for me. Like, that's the foundation of all of this.
Yes.
But inside EO, in addition to forum, which is amazing and wonderful, there are also other opportunities and experiences. And
100%.
and sometimes it's even in My EO event. I know a couple of years ago, a member went to do a My EO event. I believe it was in Nicaragua. Maybe it was a surf trip. I don't know what it was, but a bunch of boys got together. Todd Usherman, I think, was at the head of that.
El Salvador.
Right. And one of the members told me coming back, like, that was that was life-changing. We were like a forum during those days. So you can find these experiences in so many facets of
Yeah, I
EO.
agree 100%. Well, Lisa, it's been great. I want to thank you for your time. Where can people find you if they're interested in your products or services?
Oh, absolutely. So we're customnest.com on our website, and on Instagram, we are custom.nest. You're at custom.nest.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're around. And you can always find me at an EO event.
Well, it's always a pleasure. Thank you, Lisa, so much.
Thanks, Robert.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.
Bye-bye.